Hello, friends, and thank you so much for tuning into the Speaking Frankly podcast, where we have frank conversations with visionaries and thought leaders across the media, marketing, data, and research industries. I am Kym Frank, Chief Experience Officer at Motionworks and host of the podcast. Today, I will be interviewing someone who is remarkably interesting and has such an amazing history. I cannot wait to share him with you. It is Simon Chadwick, and Simon is a managing partner at Cambiar Consulting and a member of the Market Research Council. Simon, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a real pleasure, Kym, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Great. So tell us all who you are and how you got to where you are today.
Well, I am, I guess you could say I'm a researcher who went to the dark side and became a consultant. I was fortunate enough to join Unilever in 1977, and they put me in their market research company. They actually owned a market research company, which became Research International, which was the first multinational custom research company in the world. And they were, it was an amazingly, how can I put it, progressive company in terms of the way in which it developed talent. Very, very strict in terms of training, 2 years of training before you ever got to see a client. But the amazing thing was they pushed you and pushed you and pushed you just to test, how far could you go? And so having completed my training, I was told to found an agricultural research department, for example, never having been on a farm in my life. I then founded their B2B side, which became the largest B2B agency in Europe. And then at the age of 29, I got a call from the global CEO to come to his office, and he asked me, "Do you speak Italian?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Good, be there Wednesday, you're the new CEO." And I spent a fascinating time, 3.5 years in Italy. I then came back, was in management positions in the UK, and was then sent to the US to try and turn around a rather bad acquisition that happened when we were owned by Ogilvy by that time. And I was supposed to be here for 3 years, and 30 years later, I'm still here. Ran a number of companies for Kantar and for WPP, then jumped out of the frying pan into the fire and became global CEO of NOP World, which was then sold to GfK. I left shortly before that occurred. And most of the assets of that company are now owned by Ipsos. So, it's one of those crazy things. And at that time, I decided to found a company that was dedicated to the insights industry, a consulting company. And that was 2004, and here we are today.
That's wonderful. So I imagine with all of those incredible positions at really some of the global leaders in research, you have some really interesting stories to tell about different research techniques you may have employed, or just funny encounters while conducting research.
Yeah, one of the great things about Research International and later NOP was that they were both highly innovative companies. And so I think we were the first to bring conjoint into the UK, for example. I remember that they were incredibly generous with investment if you wanted to do R&D and try and bring new techniques. And a colleague of mine, Julian Bond, and I managed to get investment. We actually built the first predictive model for car sales in the world from clinics, from concept product tests, which was hugely successful. So we did a lot of very cool stuff, a lot of crazy stuff as well. I was probably the only research maybe the only research CEO in the world to have fought the mafia and won. So
Are you allowed to tell us about fighting the mafia and winning, or am I going to have to look for a new name and go into hiding?
No, it was a thing that could only happen in Italy, really, which was that this was in the days of face-to-face field work primarily, and the for some reason, well, first of all, if you wanted field work done in the South at that time, you had to go through the mob. I mean, it was that everybody had to go through the mob. They controlled the industry, as they controlled all industries. And my director of operations decided in a brainstorm with a competitor of ours that they were actually going to hire their own field force, and they were going to cut the mob out. Well, the mob didn't like that, and they started attacking our interviewers and kneecapping them and putting them in hospital. And when that didn't work, they then started writing letters to my bosses in Unilever and in RI, saying that I had my hand in the cookie jar and that we were we were issuing fraudulent results to clients. That didn't work. And then one day I received a letter written in red ink, describing my 3-year-old daughter's route to school, and how she was so pretty, and it would be a pity if something would happen to her. And so I decided to just bring it to an end, and I actually invited the mob from Bari in southeast Italy up to Milan for cappuccino and a biscotti, and around the conference table, and we hammered out a deal where we shared the profits. And
that certainly has to be an incredibly unique story.
Oh dear. Yeah, I was hung in effigy outside our New York office by a disgruntled ex-employee. But yeah, that was interesting.
Likeness of you, or you personally?
Likeness of
Were you inflatable? In my head, you were like inflatable.
No, it was a very rough effigy, and she had gotten a bunch of other people that were sort of crazy like her, and they were picketing us, and it was all pretty unpleasant. But the only thing was, we were owned by WPP then, and they then went and picketed WPP, and Sir Martin Sorrell wasn't happy about that. But,
so I hope things have now calmed down now that you're at Cambiar. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you all do there?
Yeah, so it's a change management consulting company that specializes solely in the insights industry. And by industry, I mean all parts of it. So we're talking about agencies, research agencies, we're talking about analytics agencies, and client side as well. And we do 3 things, really. We do strategic consulting, strategic and operational consulting, M&A, brokerage, and training. And the training we do is in what we call power skills. So it's all the skills necessary to go from an insight to activation. So synthesis, presentation, communication, storytelling, all of those sorts of things. The interesting thing that's happened, when we first started out in 2004, we were working primarily with research companies. Now we work with research companies, as I say, data analytics agencies and consulting companies, res tech, but we do so much more now on the client side, because we were partners with BCG when we developed and redeveloped the insights maturity model with them, and which is really a classification of the sophistication and impact of insights functions within large corporations. So we get brought in now a lot to move insights functions up that scale. And so their strategy, what they've got to do, how all the moving parts interlink, getting it in front of their management and getting it all approved and the investment approved and all of that sort of stuff. So it's hugely fascinating on all fronts. Everything that we do is, it's a great privilege to be able to do it.
Is it a large firm? How many people do you have working there?
It's not. We work nowadays on a contractor model. We used to have 16 consultants at one point, but we moved to a contractor model just before COVID, because basically we were finding we needed more and more different skill sets as our client set changed, and just to keep on bringing those skill sets on was getting to be a little bit messy.
Mm-hmm.
So we now have a huge network of consultants we use, and we have partner companies as well that we work with regularly.
And everyone's kneecaps are intact. They're all okay.
Yeah, I haven't adopted any curious management techniques from Italy.
So I see that you wrote a book. Can you tell me about it?
Yes. So I'm presuming you're not talking about any research book that I've written, but I wrote a book about modern day America, and an analysis with a kind of foreign eye. I have a foreigner, but who happens to live here, as to what was happening, but more importantly, how we could actually move forward. And I studied American society and American politics in this book through the lens of Maslow's hierarchy, and trying to explain the degree to which we were actually failing to provide the fundamental bottom levels of that hierarchy, and how therefore it's very difficult to get beyond those, and how trust is being eroded and so on. And it was quite successful. It got to one of the bestseller lists on Amazon for a very brief time, and got some good reviews. And my favorite one of all time was that I was the modern day de Tocqueville, which I really loved, and that's going up on my wall. But I don't think my reputation will last as long as de Tocqueville's reputation lasted.
Do you want to just give the title of the book one more time in case anyone listening wants to check it out?
Yes, it's called For the People: A Citizen's Manifesto to Shaping Our Nation's Future.
Great. So just shifting gears a little bit, I mentioned earlier that you are a Market Research Council member, and I know that you are working on a lot of really important initiatives for the organization this year. Do you mind giving us a little background on what your plans are, what you're doing, what you hope to achieve?
Yeah, sure. So I'm co-chairing the marketing committee of the MRC, and the marketing committee historically, I think, has been about internal marketing to our membership, particularly our events, and really getting people to attend those events and be aware of them. And that continues. But we really want to market the brand of the MRC much more strongly, because I think it is a gem within the market research community. It is 95 years old, after all, I think the oldest association of its type. But it's not very well known. It's well known perhaps at senior echelons of the industry, but not below that. So we are looking to spread that awareness, and we're looking to make it an aspirational thing that people will say, one day I want to be a member of that, as well as open up the possibility to people to see the content that we're generating at MRC over the course of any given year. So I'm working with some really talented people on the committee. We're doing classic, modern day marketing strategy. We're going to be very active on LinkedIn. We've already launched the new website. We're going to be a little controversial, maybe, in some of the some of the points of view that we're going to be putting out there, because anybody who's been to a Market Research Council meeting of members will know that we can get in some pretty good arguments, usually professional arguments about methodology or things of that nature, or what the right way to do something is. And we just want to bring that to the wider world. So a lot of work to do.
Great. And I know there's been a recent move back to in-person events for the Market Research Council, having gone virtual for quite some time. Do you foresee that being the way forward, or a mix, or?
I think it's going to be the way forward. I think hybrid is probably the best way to describe it. There will be some in person, some online, and some that are both online and in person. We want to give people the chance to be able to get together as much as possible. But we were very successful in going online when the pandemic hit. And we can reach a wider audience. One of the things that the MRC is trying to do is this was your idea and your initiative, was to achieve greater diversity in terms of age and gender and ethnicity and so on, but more geographically widespread. And so I think it's important we keep the online portion going. But yeah, there'll be many more in-person and hybrid events, I hope.
Well, I certainly cannot wait to see more people in person. So, speaking frankly, if you had one message that you could broadcast to the entire world today, what would it be?
I think it would be that this industry, whatever you want to call it, and there's a debate going on LinkedIn yet again about what we call it, but the insights industry, for want of a better word, is not only an important industry economically and commercially, but also socially. And that, I think, is so important today when we've got so much uncertainty and it appears that the world is moving backwards, the Western world in particular, and that we need to distinguish truth from fiction, let's put it that way. We need to be able to give people evidence that they can rely on, and that we can be a force for good in that. And I want people to understand that they're working for an industry that's really socially as well as commercially important, and that they're doing something valuable.
Wonderful. So if people want to get into contact with you and be socially important, or learn more about Cambiar Consulting, how can they find you?
They can find me at www.consultcambiar.com, or by emailing me at simon@consultcambiar.com.
Wonderful. So I hope people do reach out and learn more about the Market Research Council, or get involved, or hear some crazy stories from your early career. Simon, it's been wonderful talking with you today. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for everyone who listened. Really appreciate it. So join us next time for more Frank Talk with Kym Frank on Speaking Frankly.